Why are you here? Leave. Or I swear I'll call the police on you. Those words didn't come from a stranger. Or a neighbor. Or even someone who owed me money. They came from my own daughter. My flesh and blood. The little girl whose bicycle I fixed every summer evening. Whose nightmares I soothed with stories about angels and safe places. Now she stood in her doorway. Her face pale with anger. Her voice sharp enough to cut the years between us. I froze. For a second. I thought maybe I had misheard. Maybe the wind distorted her words. But her eyes, cold, unblinking, told me I hadn't. She meant it. She was ready to call the police on her own father. I didn't beg. I didn't push back. I turned slowly, feeling my chest cave in, as if something inside me had cracked beyond repair. The house behind me wasn't just her home. It was the dream I had built for her, brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck, through decades of sacrifice. Every inch of it carried my fingerprints, and yet, I was no longer welcome to step inside. As I walked down the porch steps, the bitter winter air hit me like a slap. My hands trembled, not from the cold, but from betrayal so raw it stole my breath. I whispered a question I never thought I'd ask. How does a daughter erase her father so easily? I sat in my car, staring at the glowing windows, where shadows moved inside a life I was no longer a part of. I should have driven away. Instead, I pulled out my phone. Not to call her. Not to call her husband. No. My thumb hovered over another number I had kept for years, tucked away like insurance against storms. That night, I stopped being the father who only sacrificed. That night, I decided if they wanted me gone, I would show them what it truly meant. My name is Raymond Cole, but everyone calls me Ray. I grew up on the west side of Cleveland, where winter presses on roofs and the lake drives cold through the alleys. I learned young that money does not come because you need it. At 16, I swept a machine shop after school and stacked pallets on weekends. Steel was loud and honest. If you worked, it paid. I met Laura at a church potluck when my cake collapsed, and she laughed until she cried. When our daughter arrived, Laura pressed the baby to my chest and said she would have my stubborn chin and her gentle heart. The year Nora turned 12. Laura got sick. The last morning is etched in my hands. Her coffee cooled while Nora braided her hair with careful fingers. I went back to the plant after the funeral in a shirt that felt borrowed. I took overtime because the mortgage does not bend for grief. Then I took the night janitor shift next door. Bills stacked like snow. I kept shoveling. We ate plain food at a small oak table. I sanded smooth because we could not afford a new one. Peanut butter. Scrambled eggs. Potatoes with onions. A father can love with a lunchbox and a stack of paid bills. On winter mornings, I warmed the car while Nora wrapped a scarf around my neck like a nurse. She left notes in my thermos that said, "Keep going, Dad." Those words bought me daylight. I taught her the slow lessons. How to read a pay stub. How to ask the power company about a mistake without losing your temper. How to test a used tire and when to walk away from a deal that sounds almost right. We kept receipts in a shoebox until I bought a binder with colored tabs. Red for taxes, blue for medical, green for the house. When a paper went in there, we breathed easier. Nora worked too. She shoveled snow for neighbors and babysat the twins across the street who thought she could fix any toy. She saved $10 bills in a jar called the future. We made a game of paying the mortgage early. Each extra payment earned a star on the calendar. My father once told me, if you pay a little more now, you buy a little peace later. Peace is real. You can sleep on it. By high school, she was sharper than me. She could read a room and end a fight with one steady look. Senior year, she won a scholarship that covered half her tuition at the state college downtown. I took the early shift at the plant and drove a snowplow 3 nights a week. In spring, I mowed lawns on Saturdays. I called it exercise. It was not. It was for books and bus fare and shoes that did not blister her feet. After college, she found work at a dental clinic across town. It was steady, and it let her talk all day, which she loved. The plant slowed, then slowed again. But the simple habits kept us upright. Cook at home. Mend what can be mended. Say no to easy credit. Say yes to work that pays. The binder grew thick. The green section for the house made me proud. Then Nora met someone. Brent Whitman. He was charming in a way that made a room tip toward him. He said he worked in sales and knew the names of restaurants I had never heard of. I wanted a happy ending that did not ask more overtime from me. So I told myself to give him a chance. The winter, they got engaged. I fixed the furnace with parts from a store that smelled like dust and cardboard. Brent brought candles and talked about a rustic wedding and a house with a yard where he could build a fire pit. He used words like equity and leverage. I nodded, then went to my truck and counted the cash I had saved in a thick envelope. Not enough for a down payment in our city, but still something. When Nora asked me to look at a small 3-bedroom on a quiet street, I went. The roof was sound. The plumbing moaned but held. The basement stayed dry except after a hard rain. I told her the truth. We could make it work if the bank met us halfway, and if the people inside stayed careful. She squeezed my hand and said, "We will be careful, Dad." She said it the way Laura used to say it, with light in her voice, with a future you could almost see. We sat with a loan officer beneath a poster about responsible lending. Brent talked fast. Nora looked at me like we were on the same team. The numbers were tight. The officer said a co-applicant would help. She said a parent could make the difference. I felt Laura in the room. I felt all the years stand behind me like a wall. I signed because I believed in my daughter more than I believed in any form on that desk. When the keys touched Nora's palm, she laughed like the girl at the county fair. When the cotton candy fell soft into her hand, we moved boxes until our backs ached. I put the oak table by the kitchen window. I slid the binder onto a new top shelf. That night I stood in the empty living room and listened to the quiet. It sounded like a promise. I swore I would keep it safe, even if it cost the rest of me. Brent's charm wore thin the longer I watched him. He dressed well. Always had a fresh haircut. But there was a nervous rhythm in his fingers when the mail came. He grabbed envelopes first, sliding thick ones into his jacket before Nora could see. He told stories about networking dinners that lasted past midnight. I knew salesmen. They chased commissions. But real work left a man tired in the eyes. Brent came home glowing with the kind of energy I had only seen in men chasing luck, not labor. I noticed small things first. A brand new flat screen mounted on the wall within weeks of closing on the house. Leather recliners that smelled like money I knew they didn't have. Nora said he had found deals online. Discounts too good to pass up. I kept quiet, but my stomach knotted. Deals are rarely deals. Then came the car. A shiny SUV with dealer tags still hanging. Company lease, Brent said, tossing the keys on the counter like it was nothing. I saw the paperwork later. Stuffed in a drawer, showing monthly payments that outpaced Nora's entire paycheck. I asked him once, carefully, if he thought stretching that thin was wise. He laughed, patted my shoulder like I was an old man out of touch, and said, "Don't worry, Ray. I've got systems. They want to head in the one radar." Systems. That word rolled off his tongue like it could erase math. Nora believed him. Her eyes filled with that blind faith of love. She said Brent was ambitious, that I should admire his hustle. I wanted to. God knows I wanted to. But ambition without grounding is like pouring concrete without framing. It spreads, cracks, and sinks. Bills started showing up in strange stacks. I spotted late fees on electric and cable. Notices crumpled in the trash. When I asked Nora, she brushed them off. "Brent's handling it," she said. Her voice carried the brittle edge of someone defending something they weren't sure of themselves. One evening, I stopped by unannounced. The living room was filled with flashing lights from a gaming console I didn't recognize. Empty beer bottles clinked when I set my jacket down. Brent was shouting into a headset, his face red, his words sharp. "Double down, double down." His eyes flicked to me once, then back to the screen. I thought maybe it was just a game until I caught a glimpse of the laptop open beside him. Numbers, balances, wagers flashing across sites that didn't belong to entertainment. My chest tightened. I had seen this before, not with Brent, but with men from the plant. Guys who swore they could beat the odds, who begged for advances on paychecks, who ended up pawning their tools to cover losses. Gambling wasn't a hobby. It was a slow rot that ate through families. $1 at a time. I confronted him quietly, after Nora had gone upstairs. "Brent, are you putting money on those sites?" He smirked, waved me off. "It's just investments. Ray. Faster than stocks. Smarter than bonds. You wouldn't understand." His words stung, not because he dismissed me, but because he believed his own lie. The next week I found a letter in my own mailbox addressed wrong, delivered to me by mistake. It was from a credit union. A notice about a line of credit tied to Nora's house. My signature wasn't on it, but hers was. Next to Brent's. I sat on my porch, staring at the paper until the sky went dark. My hands trembled as I read the numbers. 20,000 borrowed. Already drawn down. I tried to warn Nora. I showed her the letter, my voice shaking. She bit her lip, eyes darting. He said it was for home improvements. "Dad, we need new siding. A furnace upgrade." I cut her off. "Nora, that money isn't fixing houses. It's fixing bets." She turned away, clutching the counter, refusing to look me in the eye. The memory of Laura flickered in my mind, her soft voice telling me to protect our girl, no matter how old she got. I promised myself then, if Brent thought he could gamble with my daughter's life, he hadn't seen the fight still left in me. I did not go back right away. I gathered proof. I spent a weekend at my kitchen table with coffee and the binder open. I called the credit union about the late notice. The clerk said my number was still on Nora's file. I wrote down dates and balances and fees. I printed alerts that showed transfers at 2 in the morning. I printed screenshots of Brent's usernames on gambling sites. I stacked everything in order. On Tuesday, I timed my visit for when Nora was at the clinic. Brent worked in a shared office downtown. The receptionist waved me toward a glass door. The space smelled like new carpet and coffee. Brent sat in a corner room with a laptop and a headset. When he saw me, he pressed mute and forced a smile that did not touch his eyes. "Ray, this is a bad time." I held up the stack of paper. "Then make it a good time." He pushed the headset aside and leaned back. The chair squeaked. "You cannot just show up here." I set the papers on the table between us. A credit line for 20,000. A second line for 15. 2 cash advances. 3 transfers labeled lifestyle. "Do you want to explain lifestyle?" He glanced at the glass walls. "Keep your voice down. People are working." I kept mine low. "Nora is working. You are borrowing." He laughed softly. "You think you have it figured out? This is how business is done now. You move money. You bet on yourself. You take risk to make return. You call gambling business." I slid a printout toward him. The site logo was a joker flipping a coin. He did not touch it. I spread the documents the way I once spread blueprints. I tapped each page. Here is the equity line on the house I co-signed. Here are the cash withdrawals made hours later on a betting platform. Here is the second application where you rounded up commissions and called them base pay. Here is a hard inquiry from a lender that sells high-interest consolidation. The dates match your lost bets like footprints in snow. He reached for the stack. I held it with my hand. Tell me your number. His forehead tightened. What number? The one you need to break even. Every gambler has one. He stared at me. The buzz outside faded. 47, he said at last. His voice went small. 47,000 and change. That gets me square. Then I start winning again. 47 today becomes 60 next week. There is no square. I removed a folded page from my jacket. The original mortgage packet. Your signature next to Nora's. My signature as co-applicant. Read the clause. He skimmed and stopped. Joint and several liability. Equal standing in decisions about sale or refinancing. I watched the truth climb his face. You think you can sell the house out from under us. I think I can stop you from burning it to the ground. His chair snapped forward. He leaned in. Listen to me. I am close. I have a method. You double at the right time and you do not chase. It is math and nerve. People who do not have nerve call it addiction. I have control. My jaw tightened. Control looks like paid bills. Control looks like groceries that do not bounce a check. Control does not look like credit lines you hide. He tried a different tone. Ray. I want what is best for Nora. I just need a window to recover. 8 weeks. Maybe 10. Then you will call me a genius. You want 8 weeks of my daughter sleeping on debt. You want 10 weeks of her eating fear. He tried to smile. You are being dramatic. We are fine. I can show you my spreadsheet. Show me you're right, now. Show me balances on the screen. He hesitated. He turned the laptop halfway. Tabs lined the top. Numbers blinked in red. The last deposit came from a credit line and went straight to a betting wallet. A box popped up that said deposit successful. Another said limit reached. I pulled my phone and took a picture. He swatted at the air. You cannot take pictures in here. I pocketed the phone. This is my record if your memory gets creative. He stood. His chest rose and fell too fast. The room felt smaller. Do not do this. If you file anything, you will never see your daughter again. She loves me. She believes me. She will pick me. She already picked when she told me to get out. He flinched. I gathered the papers and slid them into my folder. I am giving you one chance to tell her the truth before she hears it from a process server. He smirked. You think a judge cares about your feelings? I shook my head. Judges care about documents. And I have them. I walked out past the fake plant and the string lights and the polite receptionist who offered me a mint. On the sidewalk, I breathed winter air that smelled like rain. I called Nora. She did not pick up. I texted and asked to meet. No reply. 10 minutes later, my phone lit with a new message. It was Brent. You will regret this. Stay away from our house. My thumb hovered over his words while buses sighed at the curb and people hurried by. I put the phone in my pocket and headed toward the courthouse. Not the family door. The public door, where anyone can walk in with an ID and a reason. My reason had a name. It also had a ledger. I did not know yet how much it would cost me in love. I knew how much it would cost in fees. I was ready to pay both. I asked Nora to meet me at the house near dusk. Snowmelt ran along the curb, and the sky looked tired. She opened the door with a smile that did not reach her eyes. She let me in and folded her arms across the sweater I bought last Christmas. What is this about? Dad. I set my binder on the oak table by the window. It is about the house, I said. about money moving without sense, about credit lines you did not know existed. She rolled her eyes like I had come to argue curfew. Brent is handling our finances. He has a plan. I unclipped the binder and laid out papers. Dates. Balances. Transfers at 2 in the morning. The notice that came to my mailbox by mistake. The application that called gambling income business revenue. The appraisal request that should not exist without my consent. I turned each page slowly, like laying brick. She did not look down. She stared at me with her jaw tight. You never liked Brent. That is what this is. I do not dislike him. I said, I dislike math that does not add up. She tapped one page and looked away. These are out of context. You do not understand how modern money works. Brent does deals. He warned me you would come here with printouts and panic. I slid the original mortgage packet forward. My signature as co-applicant. Yours as primary. I tapped a clause. If someone tries to refinance or borrow against the house, both owners must agree. Your husband did not ask. He moved money anyway. Nora finally glanced down, then away. Dad, please stop. You are making something ugly out of our life. You are treating me like a child. I shook my head. I am treating you like someone standing on thin ice. While music plays so loud, she cannot hear the cracks. She reached for her phone. She put the call on speaker and set it beside the documents like a referee. Brent answered on the second ring with a voice too calm for a fire. Hey love, what is going on? She said, Dad is here with papers. He says you opened lines of credit on the house and used them for gambling. He says he can block any refinance because he is on the mortgage. There was a beat of silence, and then the smile slid into the room through the phone. Hey Ray. Always good to talk. This is a misunderstanding. Those lines were for improvements. New water heater. Insulation. The appraiser is early because we are exploring a better rate. You taught Nora about rates. Then tell her where the 20 moved at 2:14 a.m. went. I said, tell her why the sites have slot reels on the banner. Tell her what 47 means. I heard a small intake of breath. Brent laughed, but it sounded thin. He said, that is not fair. Some transactions look strange when they pass a clearinghouse. Nora looked between the phone and my face. Her hands twisted the edge of her sweater. Brent kept talking smooth as oil. Honey, your dad is old school. He thinks every risk is a scam. He is scared because he is not in control. He does not want to release you. I turned another page. It was a screenshot from the portal that showed a betting limit and a warning in red. Deposit cap reached. I did not speak. I let Nora look. She blinked, swallowed, then spoke slowly. Brent, did you place any bets with money from our house? Silence. A faint click. The call dropped. Nora stared at the screen, then at me. Her face closed like a door when the lock slides. She tapped again. Voicemail. She lifted her chin. He will call back. He is at work. This is not what you think. I gathered the papers. No raised voice. Just the truth placed where it could be picked up. Nora, I will not stop this time. I have already consulted counsel. If your husband continues, I will file. It will be public. It will move without your permission or his. It will end with a sale you do not want. I do not say that to punish you. I say it because it is the last tool left to keep you from drowning. She pushed back from the table so hard the chair legs screeched. Her eyes filled and then emptied. You are trying to destroy my home to prove you are right. You are jealous. You want to be the man in my life who makes the rules. I breathed and counted to 5. I want you safe. I want you solvent. I want you to sleep without counting. It is not jealousy to hate a fire that will burn you. She pointed at the door with a shaking hand. Leave. Take your binder. Take your warnings. We are fine. Brent loves me. He will fix this. He promises. The last word landed like glass. I picked up the binder and the pen I have carried for 20 years. I wanted to touch her shoulder the way I did when she was 10 and afraid of storms. I did not. On the porch, the light had gone thin and blue. The street smelled like wet salt. Behind me, Nora stood in the doorway, with her arms wrapped tight, as if holding herself together, needed both hands. "Dad," she said. The word cracked. "If you make this legal, do not come back." I turned because if I did not look at her, I would never stop. I said, "I hope you never know why I have to do it." Then I stepped into the cold, and the door clicked shut between us. I sat in my truck outside their house for a long time, watching the kitchen light glow behind the curtains. My hands gripped the wheel, but my heart felt like it had slipped from my chest. I had raised Nora to trust me, to know that when I spoke, it was truth earned from years of scars and sacrifice. Yet tonight she looked at me like a trespasser. And when she threatened to call the police, I realized something had broken beyond repair. The memory kept replaying the way her voice cracked, the way her hand trembled as she held her phone like a weapon. "Leave, Dad. If you don't, I'll call the cops." Not tears, not hesitation, just cold defense. As if protecting her husband's lies mattered more than protecting her father's name. I thought about turning back, knocking once more, shouting until she listened. But what good would it do? A person drowning in denial will push away the hand trying to save them. I drove off, each mile heavier than the last. Streetlights blurred through the windshield. My chest felt tight, like I was carrying concrete blocks stacked one on top of the other. When I reached my small house, the silence inside rang louder than any argument. I set my binder on the table and poured black coffee. Though it was near midnight, I told myself I was too tired to fight. But my mind kept circling the same thought. Brent had pulled her away from me, and she had let him. Love can blind sharper than darkness. I stood in front of the bookshelf where Laura's picture still sat. Her smile, captured years before sickness stole her, seemed to look right through me. "What would you want me to do?" I whispered. My throat tightened. I remembered the night she made me promise always protect Nora, even if it meant she hated me for it. I closed my eyes and nodded, as if Laura could hear me still. The next morning, I called in a favor. An old friend, Marty, who used to handle paperwork at the plant before retiring, now worked part-time at a lawyer's office. I asked him about co-signer rights, about what control I actually had. He cleared his throat and said, "Ray, you're not just a backup name. You're on that deed. You can stop him. But if you push, you'll burn bridges you might never rebuild." He Stan. His words hit hard. But bridges already burned when my daughter raised the phone like I was a stranger. That evening, Brent showed up at my front door. He didn't knock gently. His fist pounded the wood like a hammer. I opened only with the chain latch. His face was flushed, his tie pulled loose, and I could smell whiskey mixed with cologne. "You old bastard," he hissed, pressing his hand against the frame. "Stay out of my marriage. Stay out of my house. You want to play hero, but you're nothing but a bitter old man with paperwork." "They kunshu. Paperwork built that house," I said quietly. "Paperwork holds the roof over your head. They kunshu." His jaw clenched. "If you keep meddling, you'll regret it. Accidents happen to men like you. Alone. Nobody around to hear a scream." His eyes were bloodshot, his hand twitching against his leg. I should have felt fear, but what I felt was clarity. Threats meant desperation, and desperation meant I was right. "Go home, Brent," I told him, closing the door slowly but firmly. "You're not scaring me. You're only proving me correct. I'm not two man. The chain rattled as I slid the lock in place. His car tires squealed as he sped off into the night. I stood in the quiet house, the smell of his cologne still clinging to the air, and realized begging was over. This was war. And it would not be fought with words. It would be fought with contracts, signatures, and the law. I opened the filing cabinet, pulled out the mortgage packet, and spread it across my desk under the lamp. The ink was still clear, my signature as sharp as the day I wrote it. I wasn't just Nora's father anymore. I was her co-owner, her protector, whether she liked it or not. And Brent had no idea just how far I was willing to go. I took the binder to my desk like a medic with a patient. The lamp held steady over green tabs, purchase papers, closing disclosure with rows of numbers that once tasted like victory. I traced my name. I traced Nora's. I had signed with a hope that felt like new air. I remembered the day we signed. The bank lobby smelled of lemon cleaner and paper. A young officer named Miss Hartley explained each page with bright calm. Brent made jokes about interest being a trick. Nora squeezed my hand under the table. Miss Hartley said the words that tipped me. Co-applicant. Co-signer. Equal responsibility for the debt. Equal standing for major decisions. Did I understand? I looked at my daughter and said yes. Back at my desk, I read what I should have memorized. Joint and several liability. Consent required for refinance and for any line secured by the house. In a dispute or distress, any applicant may begin protective measures. I read it 3 times, whispering the words, protective measures. That was the doorway. I pulled the deed from a plastic sleeve. County stamp. Legal description. My name next to Nora's. Brent had swagger and a password. I had a recorded instrument. I made a list in a cheap spiral. Step 1. Confirm balances on all secured lines. Step 2. Pull a credit report that shows soft hits. Step 3. Request full payment history. Step 4. Study state law on the rights of a co-owner and a co-applicant. When a property is at risk, lists steady the breath. Lists do not lie. Morning found me at the county building with people holding manila folders. The clerk pulled records by instrument number and slid copies through a window. Here are the filings, she said. Deed. Mortgage. I thanked her. At home, I used sticky notes like buoys on a map. I circled dates where Brent's transfers aligned with new draws on the equity line. I printed a calendar and filled the squares. Patterns appeared. Loss followed draw. Draw followed loss. It was not investment. It was heat. By noon, I called a legal clinic at the community college. A woman named Priya listened without interrupting. Are you on the deed? Yes. Are you on the mortgage? Yes. Do you have evidence of funds pulled without consent? Yes. In writing. She outlined options. Mediation if everyone acted in good faith. A quick order to freeze new borrowing. A partition sale that would end the risk and divide proceeds by interest. I hung up and looked at Laura's photo on the shelf. She was holding Nora at a summer fair. Both of them sunburned and laughing. I said I was sorry. Sorry for not seeing sooner. Sorry that a promise had become a blade. But a promise is a tool. In the right hands, it protects. My phone buzzed. A picture from Brent. He and Nora at dinner. Glasses raised. Captioned, "We are good. Move on." I deleted it. I opened a blank page and wrote a timeline. First line discovered. Office visit. Threat at my door. Talk with Nora. I linked each event to pages in the binder. Late afternoon, the plant called. Could I consult on a concrete pour that had gone wrong? I said yes. Work steadies the mind. When a foundation is out, You either keep pouring and hope, or you rebuild. One lasts. That night, I set the mortgage packet on the table and read the fine print until the words sat still. Then I took a yellow index card and wrote a sentence in block letters. You are not doing this to punish your child. You are doing this to stop a fire. I taped it inside the cover so I would see it when guilt came in the dark. Before bed, I called the number Priya gave me for a private attorney who handles property disputes. A man named Aaron Adler returned my call while I brushed my teeth. His voice was unhurried. Bring everything, he said. First, we protect the asset. Then we decide how to end the risk. No promises of ease, only procedure. In the evening, I logged into the credit bureau site and answered questions only I would know. The color of my first truck. The bank that held a long closed card. The street where Laura and I rented our first place. The report opened like a map. Hard pulls I did not authorize. New accounts I had never touched. I printed each page and marked them with a pen that bled a thin blue line. Then I called the lender and asked about the last draw. The voice on the line read me a timestamp. 2:14 in the morning. The same night, an online wallet showed a deposit. I asked for a freeze based on disputed consent. She said a supervisor would review by morning. I thanked her and wrote the time in my spiral with a box around it so I would not miss it later. I sat a while in the quiet and listened to the house settle. Pipes clicked. The furnace sighed. Grief moved through the rooms. But it did not knock me over. Resolve took the chair across from me and waited. I put the binder away and placed my keys on top like a weight. Tomorrow I would carry these papers into a lawyer's office and ask the law to do what love could not. Aaron Adler's office sat on the second floor of a brick building above a coffee shop. The hallway smelled like roasted beans and dust. His door bore a small plaque. Adler, Weiss, Property and Civil Law. I knocked once. He opened it himself. Sleeves rolled. Tie loose. Papers stacked behind him like small walls. Mr. Cole? His handshake was firm. Not showy. Come in. Let's see what you've got. There. I laid the binder on his desk. Each section tabbed and marked. He read quietly, page by page. Lips pressed tight. He asked short questions. Dates. Signatures. Amounts. I answered. His pen scratched across a yellow pad. When he looked up, his eyes had none of Brent's slick charm. None of Nora's blind defense. Only calculation. You are on the deed. And you are on the mortgage, he said. That gives you equal standing. Brent cannot refinance. Cannot legally draw lines. Without your signature, he has already breached that. You can seek injunction. Or you can go further. Partition by sale. That has the recting to the proof. The words felt heavy. Final. That means forcing my daughter to lose her house? He nodded. It means protecting your investment and your name. Partition is not about feelings. It is about dividing an asset when co-owners disagree. If you file, the court will order sale. Proceeds split by ownership interest. Clean, irreversible. Advir. I stared at the mortgage document again. My signature under Nora's. I remembered her eyes when she asked me to trust Brent. My throat burned. She'll hate me. Advir. She already threatened to call the police on you, he said gently. Sometimes hate is already there, just spoken in softer words. Advir. I exhaled slowly. What comes first? Freeze, he said. We petition to block new borrowing. That stops further damage. Then we prepare the partition action. I'll draft tonight. You'll sign tomorrow. Once filed. The process belongs to the court. No yelling. No persuasion. Only procedure. The next morning I signed. My name scrawled across legal forms that felt colder than any argument. Aaron slid copies into a folder and said, Service will be within 5 days. Expect calls. Tears. Maybe threats. Do not answer. Let the process carry you. That night Brent returned, pounding on my door again. I did not open it. His voice slurred through the wood. You think you're clever. Old man? She loves me. She'll never take your side. He kicked the step hard enough to splinter the edge. I stayed silent. When he drove off, I wrote the incident in my spiral. Time and detail. Evidence. 2 days later, Nora called. Her voice was sharp. Dad, we got papers. What is this? Some partition lawsuit? Why are you doing this? Because, I said. Steady. The house is being hollowed out under you. I cannot stop Brent with words. The law will. She sobbed. You're destroying us. I'm trying to keep you from being destroyed already, I said, though my chest ached, as if each word tore something loose. That evening, Aaron phoned. They've been served. You'll hear noise. Ignore it. The next step is appraisal. Noise came quick. Brent left voicemails filled with venom. Nora texted long paragraphs begging me to withdraw. Each message I saved. Printed. Filed. My binder thickened with more than numbers now. It held heartbreak. Threats. Desperation. Still. Procedure moved. A week later, I met Aaron again. He laid out the timeline. Appraiser visits in 10 days. Court hearing in 6 weeks. By summer, the property will be sold. He would never perceively. I rubbed my temples. What about them? That is their burden, he said. Your burden is 30 years of equity, and the law recognizes it. He would never perceively. When I left his office, the sun was setting behind tall glass buildings. I felt no triumph. Only the steady pulse of inevitability. Love had failed. Persuasion had failed. Even tears could not move the weight of law. At home, I pulled out Laura's picture again. I promised to protect her, I whispered. Even if she hates me for it. It is when, outside, the streetlights buzzed to life. Somewhere. Brent was telling Nora I was the villain. Somewhere. My daughter was clutching her phone in confusion and anger. And somewhere deeper, beneath their denial, the truth was waiting. Soon the truth would not need me to speak. The court would speak for me. And when that gavel fell, nothing would ever be the same. After the papers were served, the air changed. The house looked the same, but the space around it hummed like a wire. My phone would not rest. Brent left voicemails that swung from rage to charm. Nora sent messages that began with Dad and ended with please. I saved each one and answered none. That evening, a thin line appeared along my truck, a coin from headlight to tailgate. Not worth a claim, but worth a note. Move or be moved. I took pictures, wrote the time in my spiral, and called Aaron. Expect noise before relief, he said. Keep distance. Record everything. At 11, the pounding began. 3 blows. A pause. 3 more. Through the peephole I saw Brent. Shoulders hunched, eyes glassy. He shouted my name, and the names men learn in bars. I did not open. He kicked the step until the wood split, then leaned close to the door. His voice went soft. Accidents happen to old men who live alone. He said it twice and walked into the dark. I called the non-emergency line and filed a report. A cruiser rolled past an hour later. The officer took my notes and told me to lock the doors. When he left, the house grew too large. Every creak felt like a footstep. I held Laura's picture and knew I had to step away before fear wrote the next chapter. Morning brought a plan. Pack light. Find new locks and cameras. I filled 3 suitcases, lifted the binder, and tucked birth records into a shoebox. At Maple Court, I signed a month-to-month lease. The hallways were clean. The door had a code. The apartment smelled like paint and lemon. A small couch sat under a window that looked at a bus stop. It was not home. That helped. I asked Mrs. Patel to watch my porch and sent Aaron my new address. For the first time in weeks, I slept. No pounding. No headlights on my walls. In the morning, a boy laughed in the hallway. A bus sighed and moved on. I made coffee at the small table and opened the binder. New emails waited. A notice about appraisal. A letter explaining access. I forwarded both to Aaron. He replied with 3 words. All on schedule. Brent heard first. His message started hot and ended with a wobble. He said he would sue for harassment. He said a friend of a friend knew a judge. I saved the file and asked Aaron whether the appraiser would be safe. They work in pairs and only in daylight. He said, do not go there. Let the process speak. At dusk, I drove past their street without turning in. The porch light was on. Boxes under the rail. Through the window, I saw cables and cups, and Nora with her phone to her ear. She looked smaller than I remembered. I wanted to knock and tell her this was not punishment. It was a tourniquet. I kept driving. 2 days later, the appraisers arrived. Mrs. Patel said. A man with a clipboard and a woman with a camera walked the rooms while Nora watched from the porch. Brent paced and talked into his phone. He tried jokes. Then menace. The team stayed polite and professional. They measured, photographed, and left. After the car pulled away, Brent kicked the porch post. The sound was hollow. That evening, Nora called while I folded shirts into a drawer that was not mine. Her voice was hoarse. Dad. 2 strangers opened our closets. Our neighbor stared. Is this what you wanted? I closed my eyes. I wanted you safe. I wanted the bleeding to stop. You have no idea what you have done, she said, and hung up. The next morning was quiet. I walked the block to settle my legs, then read the notices in the lobby. A church pantry. A free legal clinic. People were living through storms on every floor. Mine felt loud only because it carried my child's name. By afternoon, the appraisal posted. $419,000. Market value adjusted for a forced sale. The words looked like a diagnosis. I sent the file to Aaron and asked what comes next. The hearing will set a sale order and a deadline to vacate. He said, expect a last wave of noise. It came at midnight. Brent tried a new voice. Friendly. He said a cash buyer could make it all go away if I would cancel the case. He wanted a quick deed transfer and would pay me under the table. The lie smelled strong even through the phone. I forwarded the recording to Aaron. One line came back. Do not engage. I stood at the window and watched the street below. A siren far off. A couple arguing and then laughing. A delivery car circling before finding the right building. My reflection looked tired but clear. I touched the glass and felt the faint vibration of buses at the corner. I thought of Laura telling me to choose the harder right when the easy wrong gets loud. When I lay down, the room felt like a waiting room. You count tiles. You follow the clock. You rehearse what you will say when a door opens. You tell yourself you did what you could and that you will not fold when the news arrives. I pulled the blanket to my chest and prayed for Nora the way I have prayed every night since she was born. Then I slept with my phone face down and the binder on the chair beside me. The sheriff's office delivered the official notice on a gray morning. Service of process. Partition by sale. 30 days to respond. 90 days to vacate after judgment. I held the stamped copy in my hand as if it were heavier than paper. This was no longer threat or warning. It was law moving forward. Slow but unstoppable. Within hours, my phone lit up. First, Nora. Her voice frantic. Dad. Tell me this isn't real. Please say you'll fix it. People are talking. Neighbors saw the deputy. I stayed silent until she stopped crying. Then I said, "It's real. It's the only way left." Her sobs tore through me. But my words did not change. Then Brent called. He started smooth. "You don't know what you've started. Ray, courts take forever. You'll run out of money before I do." I answered once. "I already paid with 30 years. That's enough." I ended the call. His messages turned dark, then desperate, then hollow. I saved them all. At the first hearing, I sat beside Aaron in a courtroom filled with other families in crisis. Divorce petitions, custody battles, foreclosures. The air smelled of paper and coffee, left too long on a burner. The clerk read our case number. Nora and Brent sat across the aisle. She avoided my eyes. He smirked like a gambler holding a weak hand but bluffing hard. The judge listened as Aaron laid out the documents. Deed, mortgage, unauthorized lines of credit, account transfers, appraisal report. Everything neat, ordered, undeniable. Brent tried to argue, saying it was all investment strategy. The judge cut him off. "This is not investment. This is dissipation of marital assets, secured by a co-owner's interest. The partition action is proper." The gavel struck. "Sale ordered." The words echoed in my chest. Sale ordered. 3 syllables that tore apart years of sacrifice. Nora gasped softly, covering her mouth. Brent muttered under his breath. I sat very still, staring at the seal on the wall above the bench. Justice does not smile. It only weighs and declares. The next week, a bright sign appeared in their yard. "For sale, by court order." Neighbors slowed their cars. Brent ripped the sign out once. 2 days later, deputies replaced it. The sign stood again, taller somehow. Nora called late one night. Her voice was broken. "Dad, people whisper at work. They ask if we're moving. I can't sleep. Brent says you're ruining us on purpose. Is that true?" My throat tightened. "I'm saving what I can before there's nothing left. I wish you could see that." She hung up without answering. Buyers came fast. Forced sale pricing lures quick money. 3 offers in a week. All cash. No contingencies. Aaron explained the process. The court would approve. The funds would pay debts. The remainder split. Brent shouted in the hallway after the session. "You stole from me." I looked him in the eye. I protected what was never yours to gamble. To Hiv and Manus. When the final order came, Nora's eyes brimmed with tears. Brent's face drained of color. The date to vacate was set. The 25th of March. 2 weeks. To pack a life built on borrowed lies. The night before, moving trucks arrived. I drove past slowly. Lights glowed in every room. Shadows moved across curtains. I saw boxes piled by the door. For a moment, Nora's silhouette appeared at the window. Shoulders hunched, holding something close. I thought she saw me, but she turned away. I parked a block away, sat in the dark truck, and whispered into the empty cab. "I'm sorry, baby girl. I'm sorry it came to this. But if I hadn't, you would have lost everything in silence." My hands shook on the wheel. The taste of salt filled my mouth, though I hadn't cried in years. By dawn, movers carried boxes down the steps. Brent barked orders. Nora carried a small lamp, her face pale and streaked. I stayed hidden, watching from down the street, my chest heavy as stone. The house I once helped her buy stood open, stripped, waiting for new owners. My daughter's laughter still lived in those walls, but it was drowned now by the hollow echo of departure. The sale closed on a Thursday morning in a room that smelled like toner and stale coffee. Papers slid across the table. The bank attorney read the numbers without ceremony. Mortgage satisfied. Lines of credit retired. Court costs and commissions deducted. Remaining proceeds divided by interest. A wire confirmed on my phone with a small buzz that sounded obscene for what it carried. Justice. They call it. It felt like a receipt for something no one could replace. Aaron shook my hand outside the building. He said I had done the hard part. He said the rest was administration. I nodded and walked to my truck with the envelope that held my copies. I sat behind the wheel and stared at the courthouse flag moving without effort. When the light hit the windshield just right, I saw a flash of Nora at 6 years old in the rearview mirror. She had jelly on her chin and a library book in her hand. Memory can be cruel when it arrives on time. That afternoon, the new owners took possession. A cleaning crew rolled a cart through the door. The porch sign came down. The key I had once held as a promise was now a code in a system that would never speak my name. On my phone, a final document posted. Sale complete. Title transferred. File closed. I placed the phone face down and let the silence come. Nora called at dusk. Her voice was small. She asked to meet at a diner near the river where boats knock against the dock and the coffee is always strong. I went because it is my reflex to go when she says please. She sat in a corner booth with a coat too thin for the wind. Her eyes were red, and there was a crease across her cheek where she had leaned on a box or a countertop and forgotten to move. She did not start with blame. She started with the truth. Brent had told her. Oh, lies. Inside. Lies. He had promised investors and used gambling sites. He had borrowed from a cousin and from a man who said he did collections as a side job. He had sworn none of it touched the house. He had made her repeat it until she could say it without blinking. She covered her mouth and whispered that she was sorry. She said I was right. She said she hated the words even as they saved her. I told her I was not waiting for I was right. I told her I wanted her safe. She nodded and then looked away at the window, where a gull kept landing and lifting, as if it could not decide to trust the air. She said they found a small apartment with a month-to-month lease. She said the rent was high and the walls were thin, but the landlord was kind. She said Brent had lost his job after the company checked his credit and saw the mess. She said she did not know who he would be without the lies. She asked if I hated him. I said hatred was a luxury for people who had time to waste. We have work to do. She reached across the table and touched my hand like she used to when she was little, and wanted to cross a street. Her fingers were cold. She asked if I could help with first month and deposit. She said she would pay me back with real money earned from real hours. She said Brent would not see $1. She said she would put the account in her name only and bring me the receipt before sunset. I watched her face and listened for the tone that bends truth. I heard only the sound of someone walking on bruised feet. I said yes, and wrote a number on a piece of paper and folded it into her palm. My only condition was simple. No cash to him. Rent paid directly. She nodded as if I had handed her oxygen. Brent did not come to the diner. He sent a message with a grin in the words. He said he would bounce back. He said I had taught him a lesson about leverage. He said next time he would not need my name on anything. I did not answer. I forwarded the text to a folder labeled for later and turned off the screen. We left the diner and stood in the parking lot, where the river made a low sound under the bridge. Nora asked if I could meet her at the storage unit to lift the last boxes. I said I would. We drove in separate cars. Her unit was a metal door that groaned when it rolled up. Inside were the sordid pieces of a life. A lamp with a crooked shade. The oak table I had sanded smooth. 2 boxes labeled winter and 1 labeled keep. She touched the table with her fingertips and smiled a little. We lifted without speaking. A man in the next unit coughed and dragged a mattress past us. Somewhere a radio played a song about starting over. Earnest and foolish. When the boxes were stacked by the door of her new place, she stood beside me and tried to steady her breathing. She said she did not know how to forgive herself. She asked if I had ever done something I could not forgive. I told her there are mistakes, and there are lessons that wear the shape of mistakes. This one would always ache. But ache is not the same as doom. She pressed her face into my coat sleeve like she did when she was a child, and thunder walked across the roof. On Sunday, she moved the last bag. The apartment was small and clean. The neighbor boiled something that smelled like cinnamon. We set the oak table by the window again. It fit as if tables remember where they belong. I screwed a loose chair leg tight and checked the smoke detector because small tasks can hold back waves. She poured 2 glasses of water and raised hers like a toast. "Thank you," she said, and her voice broke on the thank. When I left, she stood in the doorway with both arms wrapped around herself. She looked like the night on the porch when she told me to leave. And she did not look like that at all. She whispered again that she was sorry. I put my hand on her shoulder and told her sorrow was a start. I told her I loved her in a voice I had been saving since the courtroom. Then I walked to my truck and sat there until my heartbeat slowed. Back home, I opened the envelope with the confirmation of funds and placed it in the green section of the binder. The number looked clean and cold. I thought of overtime hours that had bought that number. I thought of peanut butter dinners and shoes repaired with glue and Laura's breath on my shoulder when we slept 3 hours before the morning shift. I thought of the house where we had believed laughter could hold a roof in place. I had gotten my share. It was fair. It did not feel like winning. It felt like holding a brick from a building that no longer stood. That night, sleep came in broken pieces. I woke to the fridge hum and the soft click of pipes that do their job without applause. Near dawn, I got up and made coffee and stood at the back door and listened to the birds announce a morning that would come whether I deserved it or not. My phone buzzed on the table. It was Nora. No words. Just a photo of the oak table, with 2 bowls and a folded napkin, and the first light of day, sliding across wood, we had both carried. Under it she sent 3 words. "I am trying." I held the phone in both hands and let the quiet answer for me, because some replies are too important for text. I put the binder away and set my keys on top. There would be bills to settle and forms to file. There would be choices about where I would live next, and how to fill evenings that had stretched without warning. There would be a daughter who would learn again how to stand on ground that did not wobble. There would be a man named Brent somewhere with his own lessons chasing him down a long road, and there would be my chest, sore from a break that did not show on a scan. Healing the way concrete cures. Slow. With weight. In its own time. Spring came late that year. Cold rain streaked the windows. Then sudden bursts of sun reminded me that seasons change whether you are ready or not. The house was gone. Sold. Emptied. Scrubbed of memory. Nora was in her apartment across town, learning to cook simple meals and keep receipts in a folder the way I once taught her. Brent had vanished into the noise of his own making. The phone stopped ringing. The binder on my desk grew still. One Sunday morning, I walked through a neighborhood of new builds with bright siding and trimmed lawns. Couples pushed strollers. Kids rode bikes with streamers on the handlebars. A realtor's sign leaned in the grass. I paused, then kept walking. Not because I wanted to buy, because I wanted to see if I could look at houses without feeling the old weight. And I could. Barely. Back at my kitchen, I brewed coffee strong and black. I sat at the table and opened the envelope that held the funds from the sale. A number on a page. Compensation. They called it justice. They claimed, but money does not hug you when your daughter screams that she'll call the police. Money does not wipe away the image of your child turning from you. Siding with a man who built castles out of cards. Still, money can build a new start. I circled a listing for a small condo near the lake. Nothing large. Nothing fancy. just a place with steady walls. Close enough that Nora could visit without crossing half the city. I told myself it was practical. I told myself it was about security. But the truth was simpler. I wanted one place where she could come for dinner, sit at a table, and not feel haunted. When she did visit weeks later, she brought a pie she had baked herself. The crust was uneven. The filling spilled. But her smile was real. We sat together in silence for a while before she whispered, "I'm still angry. But I understand now. You saved me from drowning. Even when I fought you." Her hand shook when she passed me a plate. I covered it with mine, steadying her the way I used to when storms rattled the windows. After she left, I stood at the window, watching the street. The world outside went on, cars passing, children laughing, neighbors arguing about a hedge. Ordinary life. For years, I had believed my ordinary sacrifices, extra shifts, unpaid vacations, mended shoes would shield Nora forever. But ordinary sacrifice cannot always stop extraordinary ruin. Sometimes, love must be sharp. Sometimes, protection must look like betrayal. I think of Laura often. I wonder if she would forgive me for tearing our daughter's home apart to keep her from losing everything. I believe she would. She knew the weight of promises. She knew that sometimes, the kindest act is the one that hurts in the moment, but heals in time. I carry no illusions now. My daughter may never look at me the same way again. She may carry scars I cannot erase. But she is alive. She is learning. And she is free from the man who would have swallowed her whole. That is enough. As for me, I rise each morning, make coffee, and place my keys in the wooden bowl by the door. Life goes on, quiet and steady. I do not wait for applause, or for forgiveness that may never come. I only wait for the sound of footsteps on my porch, for the day my daughter knocks, not in anger, not in fear, but simply because she wants to come home. Until then, I live with the knowledge that love is not always gentle, but it is always worth the fight.